Hello everyone and welcome to today's Cambridge University Press ELT webinar. I'm delighted to welcome Sabina Ostrowska as today's presenter. Sabina is a doctoral candidate at Exeter University in the UK, an English lecturer and an ESL writer. She's taught English in Poland, Sweden and the United Arab Emirates to students of different ages and cultural backgrounds. She's the author of 2 coursebooks and 1 teacher's book in the Cambridge University Press Unlocked series, and has also co-authored 3 teachers' books in the English Unlimited Special Edition series. She's written scenarios and activities for an immersive online course called LearnDirect English, and has presented her TESOL research on developing students' independent reading and listening skills, learner autonomy, and on using technology in the ESL classroom at international conferences in Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Sabina currently lives and works in Spain. So, over to you, Sabina.
All right, thank you, Alistair. Can you hear me? Thanks. Okay, thank you all for joining us in today's webinar. I see people are listening from Vietnam, Philippines, or Belarus, lots of listeners from Russia. I really appreciate some of you staying up late to participate. So I hope we'll have interesting time and we can share some ideas and discuss how to build on learners' world knowledge in our language classrooms. And thank you all for completing the polls while you were waiting. And well, before we start the presentation, I'd like to focus on the topic, the title page of this PowerPoint, Building on Learners' World Knowledge to Develop Their Language Skills. I've used the word building on learners' world knowledge, not fostering learners' world knowledge or teaching students about the world and things like this. The reason for using the word building is that in this webinar, we want to avoid an assumption that our learners come to a language classroom as blanks, with no personal experience, no previous experience about the world, and no knowledge about the world. And it sounds silly when I say it, but it's an assumption often made by researchers who write academic articles about world knowledge or background schemata or content schemata, is the assumption that our learners, our TESOL learners, come to a language classroom with no prior experience. And I've asked you to complete this poll because I wanted to have an idea about who your students are. And we can see that majority of you teach teenagers and young adults. There's few young learners and some adults. And what I want to put forward here before we start the discussion is that perhaps sometimes we assume students' lack of knowledge due to their cultural background or because maybe they don't know much about the world. I want to put forward here that many of the students that we teach, young learners, high school students or bridge program students, maybe they seem like they don't have a lot of world knowledge. Maybe that may be due to their age. You know, there are things that we learn. The world knowledge is something you learn as you grow, as you live in the world. And yes, I can see someone says here we can provide them with some of this knowledge about other cultures. That's right. So in this presentation, we're going to discuss how you as a teacher can share with students the world knowledge, but more importantly, how you can help them share with others and share with you this world knowledge to improve, to facilitate language learning in the classroom. And okay, we can close the polls now. I think I have a good idea. As we can see, 28, almost 30% of the people said that their students don't have much world knowledge. And similar numbers said that their students know about their culture, but not much about other cultures. Okay, so first of all, we will start with a little discussion. I would like to hear your ideas about what do you think world knowledge is. And then throughout this presentation, we will discuss in each individual language skill starting from reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And we're going to discuss, first of all, how world knowledge how world knowledge can help. I'm sorry about it. How it can affect students' language skills, and secondly, how you can use and build on their knowledge to facilitate each of these skills. And finally, I hope to leave about 10 minutes for your questions, ideas to share, and any comments. And throughout the presentation, we will keep track of all the questions you may ask. I will answer some of the urgent questions, but we will keep good track of any ideas you have so that you don't feel left out. Okay, we want to start with this little task for you. If you could come in your chat box, if you could complete for me this sentence, world knowledge means, and I don't expect you an academic definition, but off the top of your head, what comes to your mind? Would you understand world knowledge to be? I can see Sheila says, knowledge about common topics from a global perspective, information about the world, awareness of what is happening in the world, and different cultures and issues, familiarity with men and manners, knowing about how to behave. World knowledge means understanding different topics from different perspectives around the world. That's a very good point, which we'll discuss when talking about writing skills, information about other cultures, geography, politics in the world. Exactly, we'll go into this detail more when we talk about reading skills. Issues of the world, know about people's traditions and customs, knowledge of cultures, customs, so global issues. I mean, all our students, wherever they live, whether they live in Vietnam or United Arab Emirates or in Belarus or Uruguay, they are going to be global world citizens. And with time, we are all global citizens and we have to be aware of global issues. Broad knowledge about other cultures, okay? Any information that helps us understand and interpret the language. It's a very good point here, which we will not go into great detail here, but the relation between culture and language, that in order to understand a language, you actually have to know a lot about their culture. Students with world knowledge are better readers than listeners. Okay, well, you all have great points, exactly what I imagined. As you can see, I've written down some main ideas that came to my head when I was trying to define the world knowledge for myself. In this presentation, we use the term world knowledge, but in literature, also in your course books or in teacher development seminars, you will often hear terms like background knowledge or content schemata. If you are doing your master's degree or any action research or professional development research, and you're searching for articles on this issue, you probably will more likely search for the term content schemata. That would be the academic equivalent of world knowledge or background knowledge. But here, for the sake of the presentation, we will use world knowledge, but I will use all three interchangeably. They are synonymous. So first of all, I thought that world knowledge, it has to be pointed out that these are things we learn both formally and informally. Formally, of course, we learn a lot of things about geography and history and social studies and culture in school. We learn a lot in our primary and secondary school and at university. But world knowledge also is learned informally. We learn world knowledge secondhand from our friends, from reading newspapers, watching TV, from our relatives, our family. So this could be all the things that you encounter in your daily life. What's important, I think, and I want to stress here for the language classroom, is that the world knowledge is often acquired incidentally. So you, for example, if a friend of yours went on holiday to Maldives and they come back and they tell you all about the holiday, you incidentally learn a lot about the geography of Maldives, that it's on the Indian Ocean, that there are beautiful resorts there, that it's famous for fishing, and so on. So there are lots of information, world knowledge, global knowledge we do acquire informally by sharing, by talking to people. World knowledge, as all of you mentioned, are culturally determined facts, things we want to learn about other cultures because we want to know about other cultures' customs and behaviors and their history, because this information helps us in everyday life to understand newspapers, for example, to understand what we watch on the news, on television. And also, so many of you mentioned particular things like belief systems. And here, belief systems, I don't just mean religion, but also what things in this society are important. Is family important to this society? Is work and success important? And so on. History, geography, and the social structure of a given society. And here, by meaning history, I don't mean history in the kind of way you very formalized linear way that you learn in school. We learn a lot of history of the world as adults by just watching TV, reading novels even, and reading newspapers. So there's a lot of information we acquire in these ways. Someone asked you how objective are the sources of information. Well, this is, but the more information I think you have about the world, the more able you are to evaluate. If you hear a lot of contradicting reports about some facts, then perhaps it's time for you to read more about it and evaluate it. And of course, there will always be some bias, as Sheila says. But as a global citizen, the more information you have, the better you can evaluate and also see from whose perspective, who said this, why they said it, and so on. We'll go over this a little bit more in writing. So we'll start with reading. The notion of content schemata and reading skills, or how world knowledge affects our reading skills, has been researched to a great extent since 1980s. And at the end of this presentation, you can see a number of references to quite popular articles on this issue, academic articles on this issue. However, if you want to do any of your professional development projects for your teaching degree or qualifications, you may perhaps want to focus on different skills like listening and speaking and content schemata, because these areas haven't been researched as much. So some of you may be aware of this. So first, let's just review this quickly. World knowledge and reading skills. First of all, having some background information about the topic helps us predict information, which means we are not stressed about the language so much. And being able to predict information affects that we are able to guess new words from the context, because we are already familiar with the topic. Let me give you an example here. So I moved to Spain last year, and I've been living here since last September, and I've been learning Spanish. And my Spanish is okay. I learned a lot of it informally on the streets and talking to my neighbors. But now I'm taking a Spanish class. And so in my Spanish class, I have to read articles and do homework like our students do. So couple of weeks ago, I had to read an article about life expectancy in Spain. Spain has the longest life expectancy in Europe. So the article was in Spanish, and my Spanish is not very good. I'd say it's at the most intermediate level. I struggle with past tenses, so it's not very good. But because I've read about this information about the topic of life expectancy and Spanish lifestyle being so extremely healthy, I was able to get a lot of vocabulary that were above my language level. For example, like the word life expectancy, carbohydrates, Mediterranean diet, a little bit much more advanced words than what I use in everyday. So you can see how having some background knowledge about the topic can really help you easily guess the new words. Also, the article that I was reading had a lot of grammatical structures that I never use myself in my everyday conversation. You know, I wouldn't even dream being able to write these grammatical structures. But because I knew the topic and I was interested in the topic, I was able to kind of overlook it. I understood the sentence without being able to kind of analyze the grammatical structure of each sentence. So overall, if we have some background information about the topic, if we already know even a little bit about it, it can help us lessen the cognitive burden. So as a learner, I don't have to worry about all these new words, all this new grammar. I can maybe focus more on enjoying the new information. And I will show you now how it works. So have a look at this activity. And so what are the top 5 favorite sports in the world? So I want to hear your opinions. So have a think. I want you to guess. Don't Google it. What are the top 5 favorite sports in the world, in your opinion? You can use your chat box to write your votes, please. We'll have a little game here. Football. Mm-hmm. Okay, so football. Anyone can think of what could be the second most popular sport in the world? The second most popular: golf, tennis, football, cricket, football, rugby, skiing. Okay, tennis, chess. Okay, coming from United Arab Emirates, do we have any votes? Athletics. Okay, all right. So let's imagine we have our students have a little group discussion and just discuss it. Which sport do they think? Of course, we all kind of agree here. Football is number one. We have a lot of tennis. And students could actually argue with each other. We have cricket and basketball. So this is a good lead-in for a reading activity. Okay. So the next step, we would give students reading comprehension. So this is a text about top 5 most popular sports in the world. If you look at the first paragraph, of course, we can say number 1 is football, and you were all correct. And the second one, if you can guess, and you can scan also, it says this English game is slow and boring, but many people think it's fast and exciting. And you can see Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Australia. So you can guess it's cricket, definitely. The third most popular sport in the world, it's not basketball and baseball, but 2 billion people around the world play field hockey. So this is a little surprise fact. I would never have guessed that. The third one, most of you have guessed, is we have competitions, Wimbledon, Rafa Nadal, Maria Sharapova. Of course, it's tennis. And the final one is Formula One, United Arab Emirates, Malaysia. It's motor racing or car racing. So if students had a little discussion before that, and now they have a reason to read about this text and see if their predictions were correct. And it makes them maybe more interested in the topic. Another thing here in this text, this is for A1 level, you see we have words like teams. National teams are Brazil, Argentina, and Spain. Popular teams are Manchester United, Real Madrid, and Chelsea. So even a person like me, who I think I've watched a football match twice in my life, I know what these things are: Manchester United, Real Madrid, and Chelsea. So I can figure out that the word teams means football teams. Another difficult word in this text that students could struggle with is competitions. Because this is A1 level and competition is maybe a little bit more difficult. But we have the most popular competitions are the Australian Open, French Open, Wimbledon, and the US Open. At the least, they've heard about Wimbledon and they've heard about Rafa Nadal and Maria Sharapova. So they will be able to figure out that competitions means kind of a game when people compete for the first place. So these are just some examples of how having some background knowledge and helping students start to think about it before they read can facilitate the reading. Some other ways of using background knowledge, um, building on learners' background knowledge to facilitate reading is using the visuals. Most course books have fantastic pictures. Most of the pictures come with captions, as you can see here. All the pictures usually have a caption, one here, one here. From my experience of teaching in United Arab Emirates, I've noticed that most students never read the captions of the photographs. And that's very surprising for me because as an adult reader, as a professional, I read every day for pleasure. Reading captions under or over illustrations, whether it's an internet article or a newspaper article, is something that we do as readers naturally. That would be the first thing you would really do before you even start reading the article. So first of all, I think it's a good idea not to treat the visuals as if they just decoration for your text, but perhaps draw learners' attention to these visuals. And at very low level, before students even start reading, we may want to use the visuals for a simple activity like describe the pictures. And for A1 level, students will be able you will be able to elicit a lot of vocabulary here, like winter, cold, snow, warm, it's a warm cafe, freezing, maybe you want to ask them about winter sports like skiing, ice skating. So just drawing attention for a couple of minutes before the reading task to the pictures and the captions can greatly facilitate the reading task. And another thing is you might want to ask students to read the captions and ask what is Yakutsk, who is Svetlana. Now, I know that students whose mother tongue is not Indo-European, so for example, Arabic speakers who are learning English, struggle often with capital letters. Like here we have Svetlana and we have Yakutsk. So this is one way to keep on drawing students' attention to Yakutsk is a name. For example, in my experience, when in the teaching reading class, students would often point to a name of a person like Carla or Mark and ask me what this word means. Because they didn't see the difference between the capital letters and lowercase letters immediately, they would often search for the names in the dictionary. So drawing attention to the names, proper names, is again one way to facilitate reading later on. And again, in your reading books, you will find a lot of charts like this one and tables. And students really have to, for students who are preparing to study in English for academic purposes, they really need to start analyzing these tables and graphs. And as a teacher, you may want to even prepare one or two questions about this graph, like how cold is it in Yakutsk in January, for example. Or just show the pictures and ask students where do you think Yakutsk is, and have them guess. Is it in America? Is it in Asia? Which country do you think it is? What do you know about this country, and so on. Another idea that I used in the past is using the reading texts from academic, from textbooks for English for academic purposes to generate general knowledge quizzes. So for example, even in the simple text, we have a lot of facts. Like there is temperature in the freezer, where is Yakutsk? What's the average temperature in Yakutsk in the winter? Is it minus 18, minus 42? Minus 15. So all this information can be found in the text. Now you can use you can prepare your general knowledge quiz beforehand and have a little PowerPoint and put students into groups of 3 to 4 students in each group. And before they even open the book, before they even do any reading, you can do a little fun 10-minute general knowledge quiz. And during the reading class, they will find out later answers to these questions. It's just to make students interested a little bit more in the topic that they're going through it, and students do like competition, so it also taps into their competitive streak. What I used to do with my colleagues, we used to create a bank of this kind of general knowledge questions based on the readings from our reading book, because you can't expect to um, prepare a general knowledge quiz about like lots of facts about Europe or lots of facts about United States and expect students to know about it. They have to be able to have seen it somewhere before or heard from another student. So they must have been engaged with this information before we can have a general knowledge quiz. And after you do 2 or 3 units in a book, at the end of the month, you can have kind of cross-sectional general knowledge quiz where two different groups of two different classes come together, and you and the teacher from that class prepare a little general knowledge quiz. Again, based on the information from the reading in the book. Okay, let's move on now to the writing skills. Now, uh, writing is very difficult. First of all, before you can write about anything, you need to have some idea about the topic. So having background knowledge about the topic, first of all, helps you develop ideas for writing. Secondly, having background knowledge and having some global knowledge about global issues and world issues um, helps you understand the topic. An example that I like to give is a few years ago, our students had to write a final exam. It was like a 250-word essay, and the topic of the essay was about space exploration. Should government continue to fund space exploration, or could the money be better spent? Not in those exact words, of course. And what's your opinion? And the students were 17 to 18-year-olds in a bridge program in the United Arab Emirates. They've never really considered space exploration. We haven't read about it. We haven't discussed it before. It was just one of those things when the students get a writing topic on the final exam, and they really never get a chance to prepare for the writing task. So anyone, if I had to write about this topic, I would like to read something before. If you just gave me a blank piece of paper and asked me to write my opinion, I would write something, but it won't be very good. Another thing that if you do have some knowledge about the world and global issues, you are able to present a balanced opinion. Students often struggle in presenting both sides of a debate or giving counter arguments, thinking from another perspective. Reading about the world, listening about the world really helps you develop the skills. And of course, another big issue that students struggle with in writing is providing supporting arguments in their writing. So even if they write an opinion essay and they decide, oh, okay, I agree with this, and they say, yes, first of all, I agree with blah, 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 and that's it. They really often struggle, especially the young adults and teenagers, in developing supporting ideas, like examples from their life. And so it's quite important to scaffold all the writing. And this biggest part of the scaffolding is working with students of what they already know about the topic, allowing students time to share ideas about the topic with each other so that they can get ready for writing. Here's are 2 examples of writing tasks. Outline human causes of climate change. What effects will this have on the planet? Anyone, I think, would need to read before they can answer this question a little bit. Of course, we can all provide some, some first ideas that come to our head, but it's very important to allow students to digest the topic, to think about it, to read about it. Or the other topic here, what can people do to live longer? What can a government do to increase average life expectancy of its country's citizens? There's a lot of information that one would need to have before they can start answering this question, like what's life expectancy in my country? What are the common health issues in my country, in my country and so on. So to help to build on the students, what the students already know about the world, first of all, it's always very important before any writing task to give them reading or listening material to get information about the subject. And secondly, from that material, we can often elicit key vocabulary that the students can later reuse in their own writing. Like you have here a little activity um, about the causes of the climate change, melting glaciers, storms, and so on. So it's a little activity based on a reading that helps students arrange the information and give them some vocabulary. Uh, in my writing classes, I used to spend a lot of time on brainstorming. So before after we've done the reading or listening, we've studied the vocabulary, and often if there is any grammar necessary for the writing, we do all this preparation. So now you think, oh, the students are ready to write. No, they're not. I found that often we would even spend an hour putting students into groups of 3 or 4 and having them prepare group mind maps or layouts or brainstorming plans for the task. And students, when they work together, I found they find it so much easier to hear especially the supporting arguments, because they will hear other people's having an opinion about the topic. And so that they can actually steal their ideas, as a team. So after students work for 20 minutes on the brainstorming, then I would nominate one person or ask them to nominate themselves from that group and come in front of the class and present their brainstorming ideas for this essay. It really facilitated the writing task later on, because then students who didn't even have much background knowledge about the topic, they would hear other students' stories about this, other students' opinions, and it really facilitated the writing task. And the essays were much, much neater afterwards. And in order to scaffold the writing, it's very difficult. I mean, here are some examples. You really have to train students in different ways of organizing their ideas. I mean, here is one of increasing life expectancy, diet, and exercise, individual, and then government. Here's the typical one for lower levels like A1 and A2 levels. I like spider diagrams. I use them a lot for lower levels because it really helps students who feel like they sometimes feel they don't have much to write about, but suddenly when you prepare for them a little spider diagram with like what, when, where, food and drink, activities, clothes, or then suddenly see, oh, this is already like 1, 2, 3, 5 sentences, a little paragraph I can write about festival in my city. And in lower level class, it really pays off later on if you even spend an hour with them. First of all, discussing a spider diagram like this, then doing an example together as a class or in small groups, and then finally have students come up with their own festival, work in small groups, and share again their ideas, draw their own mind maps on the whiteboard with the rest of the class. Okay, we will move on now to the listening skills. I find listening especially interesting to research because it has often been quite overlooked by researchers. And listening in a foreign language is especially high in anxiety. And if any of you have tried to learn another language and have to listen to it, first of all, you have to listen to real speakers speaking on the street, but also in a classroom environment. Listening increases our anxiety a lot. The reason for this is that if you do reading, for example, you have your text, you have time to read, you can use a dictionary, you can read the same sentence as many times as you want. You can ask a more able peer, your friend next to you, what does it mean? You have a lot of space to try to understand a reading text. With listening, listening is always timed. So you hear something, whether it's a tape or a speaker, and it's gone. And of course, a tape you can repeat, but how many times? You can ask a person to repeat something, but again, after 3 times, and you're still not understanding what they said, it becomes embarrassing. And this really is the reason why listening really can destroy a learner, in the sense that it affects how we feel about ourselves, because it's often a kind of thing you do face to face. And especially adult learners, but also young adult learners, they often feel they lose their self-esteem if they look silly, because they don't understand an audio, or they don't understand a speaker. So in order to lower this anxiety, um, we can help students work on what they work on what they already know about the topic before we even play the tape, play the audio, or play the video in the classroom. It's very important, because it first of all helps students prepare for the tasks. It makes students start thinking about the topic, but it also gets students to kind of recycle the words about the topic that they already know, and hear other students say the words, so that when they hear the new words in the listening, it becomes less of a burden. Okay. Here's a little activity here for a listening task. How do we use your background knowledge, students' background knowledge in a listening task? So this is an activity before a radio conversation with a flight attendant who is afraid of flying. So before students even listen, we want them to work in small groups and have a little discussion. When was the last time you flew on a plane? Did you enjoy it? I mean, most people who've flown on a plane have a lot of stories to say about it, and complaining what they like. I mean, we all love to talk about our plane trips. What was the longest plane trip you've ever taken? And what forms of transport do you think is the most dangerous? Can you guess? Can anyone guess which of the following forms of transport do you think is the most dangerous? Motorbike, flying, car? I'm looking for the motorbike, car. Okay, so we agree flying is not the most dangerous form of transport. Train? Mm, no. Okay, so it's between motorbike and car. So this now gives students a reason to listen to the radio program, because on the radio program the presenter provides an answer to this, and so the most dangerous, of course, is the motorbike. So if we start with a little discussion like this, the students are already ready to listen to the program. And most of the course books nowadays include videos. This is a great idea, because if your course book includes videos, you may want to prepare some snapshots from a video, and this will help predict the content. So for example, here we have 4 snapshots from a video. Can anyone guess where it was taken? And so we can ask students, where do you think it was taken? Where in the world do you think this is? Who is this person? What is he doing? But also, if if it's a much lower level, you may want to elicit some vocabulary already. So here we can elicit helicopter, mountains, volcano. We have gas. Then the students may be guessing what the man's job is, so they can come up with words like scientist, researcher. He is wearing a gas mask, so we'll have the word gas. And okay, and so this, of course, is volcanoes in Kamchatka. But just having this little pre-watching task makes students interested in this, and also allows students, some students might have been to Russia, some students might have watched video on Discovery Channel, or might have read about this. So it's very important to kind of try to see how much students already know about this topic. and have students tell others about it and elicit as much vocabulary and as much background knowledge as we can about it. Here's another way you can use how we use visuals to predict content and elicit new vocabulary. These pictures come before a lecture about building greenhouses in the desert. So here, before students even start, this is quite a difficult lecture, but we are able to elicit words like you can point to this. What kind of energy do you think it is? It's a solar energy. We have a greenhouse. This is an example of a greenhouse. You may want to, if the students are more scientifically oriented, you may want to go over this diagram a little bit more detailed before before the lecture, or have students describe it to each other in little groups and figure out how the process works. Do I elicit target vocabulary first or after the discussion? I think it would depend on the level. In A1 or A2 level, you may want to use the visuals and elicit some vocabulary before, so to facilitate discussion. But if it's a B1 level, I would allow students to start the discussions in the little groups, and I would monitor, walk around, and just take notes, and then write in the follow-up. We would write down all the good words that we've heard. So I think it depends. Depends on the task and depends on the level of the student. Okay, so let's move on to the speaking skills. So here's a little reading task for you. Which of the following are not true? Background knowledge can lower learners' apprehension of the speaking task. B. Increase fluency in speaking. Help predict turns in a communicative task. Help focus on the language. Or increase learners' motivation and interest in the topic. Any guesses? C. Help predict turns in a cognitive task. A. Learners' apprehension. Apprehension, I mean worry, anxiety about the speaking task. Okay, we have E. Increase learner motivation. Okay, so okay, no one so far is correct. Okay, anyone can guess? I'll give you a few more seconds, but we don't want too much silence. All are true. Who said? Daria. Okay, thank you, Daria. All are true. Thank you. It's a tricky question. Okay, that's a good way of all. Exactly, Elizabeth. All are true. It's a good way to get students to read something very carefully and make them think about it. Okay, so all of this, of course, background knowledge, background knowledge can lower learners' apprehension, because if I already know about the topic, I don't have to worry about the content. What am I going to talk about? For example, in my speaking, in my Spanish classes, I have to give a presentation every 2 weeks. So I always choose topics that I'm quite familiar with, like cooking and telling people how to make a gazpacho, because these things are very easy for me and I don't have to worry about the content. I don't have to remember what to say because I already know what to say. All I need to worry about is the vocabulary and the language. And increase fluency in speaking. That's kind of obvious, because if you don't have to worry about your vocabulary, you can just speak with a little bit more fluency. Maybe you worry a little bit less about making small grammar mistakes. Also, this one, predict turns in a communicative task. If you're familiar with different types of speaking genres, like it's a debate, this is the discussion, and how you should interact with other people, where do you have to confirm what other people say, how to ask, how to agree and disagree in a polite way, in an academic context, and how you can agree and disagree in an informal context. Being familiar with different speaking genres will help you be a better speaker. Helps focus on the language. So if I don't need to worry about the content, I can focus a little bit more maybe about my past forms and use them correctly. And finally, I think it increases your motivation because you get this sense of achievement. If you give a little presentation in your class and you feel you have been fluent and you conveyed something with enthusiasm, you get this self feeling of achievement. And you know that it always builds on motivation and helps increase the interest in the topic. So here are some examples of how we can facilitate speaking. Here I use the photography because I really like, I used to study photography in high school, so and I like modern photography. It's quite amazing. But for example, here we have a topic of celebrations. So we can teach the word celebrations. And I think by discussing the photographs with a partner or in very small groups, depends on your class size. The students can really start thinking about the idea of celebrations and festivities. And it's just a course book, so you never have to stick just to the questions that are given. You may want to ask students, what does a wedding look like in your country? What is the popular festive food in your country? Do people in your country celebrate birthdays? How they celebrate birthdays? And all these things. So it can really become a lively discussion. But photography here is to help facilitate the speaking and make students interested in the topic. And here we have a Korean wedding, if you're interested, and an Eid celebration and a birthday party, American birthday party, of course. Another example how I like to use photography is before students even open the books, when you start a new unit, you may want to project just a fragment of a photograph. Okay, so this photograph, this fragment of a photograph, it's not a complete photograph, comes from a unit about jobs. So you may want to just show students just a little fragment of this picture and ask them to guess what job does this photograph show. And in this way, you can kind of elicit lots of different jobs. Maybe the students will think that it's about sailing, driving a car, driving a truck, engineering, architecture, civil engineering. So we can have a little lively discussion about this, and during the discussion a little bit about the topic. And of course, the picture was depicting a person painting a bridge at high altitude. So this is kind of interesting, and you may want to ask students now, what is your opinion of this man's job? Where is he? This, of course, is in Florida. And do you know of other similar jobs in your country? And so on. So just get students to talk about the different jobs, not just your typical doctor, lawyer, teacher, but we can try to expand a little bit their horizons and make them think about different jobs from different perspectives. Okay, so in short, we're coming close with this webinar. We use visuals in textbooks to share world knowledge with your students. And I want to stress the word here, to share. You're not expected to be an alpha and omega and know all about the world. But you can share with them what you already know. You can share your inquiry. If you yourself see a photograph in a book and you're interested to know more about it, you can take a little detour from your lesson and do a little Google search and find out about it. Make sure you get as much as you can from the students. So instead of lecturing, make sure they have a chance to say what they know already. And so, because we really learn a lot of the world knowledge in an informal way. We learn a lot from our friends by listening to the stories that our teacher tells you, but informal stories, not a lecture. We use listening and reading text to prepare general knowledge quizzes. They are kind of fun, and they have help students consolidate what they've been doing in the classroom. Learn and discover new facts together. Again, I want to stress here the word discover. Uh, None of us know everything, and we want to learn with our students. Listen to what your students already know, but also and give them space to express and share what they already know. Use photographs to facilitate discussion. So don't just ignore the photographs in your course book, but try to use them as a starter to facilitate discussion, to get students interested in the topic, to elicit vocabulary. Um, Explore students' world knowledge to scaffold productive tasks like speaking and writing. These two are very difficult tasks, and they have to be very carefully scaffolded, from providing reading material, vocabulary, grammar, and then giving students a lot of space to discuss and brainstorm and plan before they do the productive task. And finally, tap into what the students already know to facilitate listening and reading tasks, because as we've seen, helping students activate what they already know about the topic can really pay off in terms of them being able to guess the new vocabulary from the context, increase fluency in reading, and so on. And I've taken this quotation, I really enjoy it. It's from a book for teachers in America who teach students in mainstream classrooms who are not native speakers. But I think it's quite appropriate. It says here, language difficulty increases with cognitive difficulty, unfamiliarity, and lack of context. So that building onto students' world knowledge helps decrease these problems, right? We don't want students to worry about what they're reading. We want students to be familiar with the text and be familiar with the context before they start to read and listen. And when developing language with English learners, teachers must work to start where students are. This includes finding out what students already know about a new topic and helping them to make connections between what they already know and what they are learning. It's very important. I like this sentence because it shows you the connections. If the students have a chance before a language task to um, talk about it, to share what they already know about it, it helps them make connection between the new information and the old one. And following that, of course, the language follows. Integrating language learning with content learning allows for meaningful and relevant experience. And I also want to stress that one out, right? We want students to feel that that they're sharing their life experience with you in the classroom, because language learning has to be meaningful. And if and we can all adjust and adapt our textbooks so that the students have a chance to make them their own. It allows learners to use the new language to share what they already know about the world. It also helps students learn about the world around them. So bringing the old and helping them understand the new. I think it's very important. It's a very good way of teaching English for academic purposes and making students motivated and interested in the topics. Okay, and making them in the future global citizens. Okay, so that's all I think from me. So if we have some few minutes to answer questions, share ideas. I can't speak and write at the same time, so I have a question from Chandli. Can you recommend any sites for more practice with visuals? Yeah, what I used, it's not a site. I used Google Images in the past. So for come to create vocabulary activities or kind of discussion starters, you basically just go to Google Images and you have millions of fantastic pictures that you can use for the purpose of your class. Yeah, and Laura has, oh, there's something else. What about for very small groups, 2-3 students? You have 2-3 students in your class. Well, that's fantastic because you can really focus on teaching on a very personal level and come maybe with longer tasks and longer discussions, because in a big language classrooms, really each student only has like a minute or two to speak. Whereas if you have 2-3 students, you have great chance for the students, for all of them to speak at length.
Thank you. We've got a question from Yaroslava
Mm-hmm.
Lojodova, who
Yes.
asks whether background knowledge how background knowledge does lower students' apprehension of speaking tasks. Is this a cultural issue or?
Background knowledge, because if is there some cultural problem? I'll start from the end, okay? Mm, no, I don't. I don't think. I don't think it's a cultural problem. It's a problem of knowing about the topic, knowing about the subject. So, for example, if I'm already quite familiar with the subject, I can speak about it with confidence. Um, I can give you an example. Again, I like to give examples from my experience when I learned different languages. So I lived in Sweden many years ago and I had to learn Swedish. So in my Swedish class, I had to give a lot of presentations. But because I was already an adult and I finished my university studies, I would often give presentations about academic things like literature and history. But because I already knew so much about these topics, I was never worried about, oh, what shall I talk about next? I don't know much about it. I was really able to focus on
Okay.
on the content. Mm.
Okay, thanks. Interesting question
Um,
from
mhm,
Yulia Demyanchenko, who asks, "What do you do
mhm.
next if when the students are making their predictions based on background knowledge, they don't seem that engaged, or it provokes indifference on their part? How do you get them engaged?"
That's a good question. It's a tricky one. Okay. Um, Well, I mean that you would know your students beforehand already, so you'd have some idea about what to expect. I mean, I'm not talking about your first week with the class, but let's say we're somewhere in the middle of the semester and you know something. Um, I think it's a question of adjusting the material in the course books to you individual students. So when I teach, and sometimes I would look at the discussion questions or even a writing topic in a book, or something that are there to help brainstorm or um, tap into background knowledge, and I'll think, no, my students will not like this. I know them. I know they will not. I would change them. Think how you can change it. Think how you can make it more interested. Think making it into a competition usually helps if they really unmotivated, I think.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so the competition does seem to get the students engaged. Question from Christine, again, about how you tie this in with a blended learning model. Sabina, do you have
Um,
any thoughts
yes,
on
I
that?
mean you can all these activities we discussed here. I mean you can
Uh, Sabina, we've got a bit of a problem with your microphone.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Oh, is it better? Okay. With blended learning, I think all the activities, that I discussed today, you can adapt them for iPads or smartphones. Um, I don't see why not. If you live in a country where students have easy access to technology, you can easily incorporate technology with that. I don't see why not. For me, it's a technical issue, not so much a methodology issue. I don't know. Mm.
Okay, thanks. How do you encourage shy or very passive students?
hmm I find, yeah, that's a very good question. How to encourage shy or passive students? I mean, the reason why some students, you need to think about the reason why they're being shy or passive. Some students are passive because they don't want to be there for different reasons, and sometimes you can't overcome it. Maybe they have a special scholarship and they were told to come to your class. You can't fight this. But if you have students who are just shy because, like I mentioned, the affective factors and anxiety about using foreign language, um, I find, in my experience, giving them some leadership roles can be a great way to help them stimulate and motivate them a little bit more, I think. And also allowing them space to talk in a comfortable and anxiety-free kind of environment. So not necessarily putting them on the spot immediately. Yeah, give them something to get comfortable, exactly. But give them a task, meaningful task that they can feel proud of, I think. Great ideas.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. But thank you very much, Sabina, for a really interesting session filled with lots of absolutely great ideas. Don't forget, everyone, that we'll be back on Friday, 2 hours later than usual, when Dennis Johnson will be talking about collaborative activities in advanced adult ESL classes. Then on Tuesday next week at the usual time, Kay Bentley joins us for a session on boosting young learners' content and language proficiency with video-based lessons. And I should also mention that the other webinar we were scheduled to run this week with Nikki Joseph, that's had to be postponed, I'm afraid, but we'll let you know as soon as we can reschedule that. And you can sign up for all of those by visiting our events page, and I'll just type the URL for that into the chat box. Yep, I think I've typed that correctly. So you can sign up for all of our forthcoming webinars at that page. The recording of today's webinar should be live on our blog and on our YouTube channel on Thursday, and we'll send you a certificate of attendance by Monday. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you particularly, Sabina, and we hope we'll see as many of you as possible on Friday and again on Tuesday. Thanks very much.
Thank you.